forget about AI for a second. Like, don't like forget that AI is even in this conversation. What would you do normally? Like, what would you do as an engineering team?
Welcome to Tabletop, where tech meets the rub, where CTOs share the tales and the comments of startups to big names, innovations unfold. How many CTOs will share their stories untold?
Welcome everybody to another episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. My name is Brad Hefta-Gaub, and my trusty co-host is
Scott Porad. How are you doing, Brad?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Brad, I think our listeners know
Yes.
that we prepare for hours and hours and
Hours.
hours
Hours in
before these
advance.
calls.
We do. Yes.
No, not on the days when we don't have a guest. Sometimes we just roll the dice.
We do. We just roll the dice. We have no
And
idea what we're
today
going to
is
talk about.
we're gonna spin the wheel today, and it's gonna be Brad's choice.
Well, let's see. I had an interesting week this week where I was working with one of my top high performance teams, one of my top high performance engineers, and he basically blew my mind on what he was doing, how he was using AI. And I was like, "Oh, okay. This I need to pay attention to this." Like this
He
is
blew your mind.
yeah, he blew my mind. Because
That's
I
pretty
thought
explosive.
it was I okay, so and I'll just say that like the context here is that this guy and this team is doing the way I've basically kind of been coding the way they've been coding with AI and incredible performance. Like this team has basically completely consumed the product backlog of their product owner. Like there's nothing left for them to work on. And they're the teams that are cranking out. And of course, we don't care about lines of code. That's not the right way to measure business value, but they're the ones that are like every single person on this team is doing 3,000 lines of code a day per developer consistently every day. Like they're just cranking out business value. And so I was a little bit like, hey man, hard to optimize past that, right? Like
Mhm.
they're doing pretty great stuff. And I kind of mentioned a couple times ago we met and talked about this, how I kind of went viral a little bit by saying like, hey, um, nobody's running agents overnight. That's not how this is done. They're like real serious engineers are actually like guiding the agents, very, very clear plan modes, very clear like guardrails on quality. And um, and this is one of the engineers that I was thinking about when I said that.
Mhm.
And I noticed he was doing code reviews on people's PRs like really fast. And he was getting some really good quality out of these code reviews, like real insights. And so I was like, and when I say really fast, what I mean is they were kind of appearing out of nowhere. Like no one was asking him to do the code review and they were appearing. And I was like, what is going on? And I asked him, and it turns out he is running the agents overnight. And he has built up a system for that that is quite impressive.
Okay, before I respond to that, I just have
Yeah.
to. I know you're a music guy. When you talked about getting to the end of the product backlog, that the product owner didn't have anything left, it reminded me of a song by a rapper I like, a woman. And the refrain of this song is, "No one ever really knows what happens at the end of the road." But it sounds like that team has gotten to the end of the road.
I mean, they've at least gotten to the point where now the product owner needs to start cranking out new features, or decide how to use that value.
Okay, so coming back to the guy who's doing code reviews all the time. So is what's going on there is he has like something listening for a webhook on GitHub, and every time somebody submits a PR, it wakes up an agent and goes and fetches the data.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
when I
part
say
of
the
it.
data goes and fetches the PR, and
Yep. That's a big part of it. So
is that
he,
what he's got going on?
yeah, so yeah, and we should get him on the pod. And I chatted with him. He's interested in coming on and giving. So we won't go into all the details because he'll be able to do them better than I will. But effectively, yeah, he's essentially he's not using Claude Code to do this, but once we started talking about this, another person on the team goes, "Oh yeah, I started using the new Claude Code loop feature or the scheduled agent feature and it can do the same thing, and I'm having it do that, but I'm just having it doing it on my PRs." So basically, yeah, the guy's got a harness, and we should talk
Hmm.
about like the components that make all this work, but he's got his own harness that has a whole collection of skills and markdown files that represent what he describes as a world-class code review. So like, he's given it, he's got I mean, he's, a senior engineer. He's got years of his own doing code reviews against code. He's got years of his own writing code. And so he's got his own RAG set up, which is like his opinionated view on how to do code reviews. And all of that is arming his harness that the harness is able to like pull down the latest PR for the repos that he's interested in looking at. He's got them all listed. Something new comes into that repo, it pulls it down, runs a code review against using his opinionated way of doing code reviews, and then submits comments back to the PR.
I think what's really interesting about that whole thing is the part you said about the opinionated code review. And in particular, you've probably heard the expression before about pornography. I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
I think what I'm taking from the story of this guy is that to use agents and skills, you can't treat it like pornography. You actually have to, even if you have an opinion, you have to be able to describe
Describes your opinion.
your opinion,
Yep.
right? And in some, sort of concrete kinds of ways. You couldn't just tell an agent, well, you'll know it if you see it, right?
And that being said, and again, like we'll have to like if we can get him on the pod and we can talk with have him tell more about what he feels
Yeah.
comfortable sharing. I do think that you can get a long ways with most of the LLMs by saying, you are a security expert. Your job is
Hmm.
to look for the following types of concerns,
Hmm.
and then you enumerate those concerns. And
Yeah.
so I think it's very possible that what part of his opinion is an enumeration of the types of things that matter to him when he does code reviews, right?
100%. What I'm simply getting at is that for a lot of engineers, all throughout time, or at least the time that I've worked, which is not all of time, but most of it. And well, that gets at the nature of time. So let's not go there. But a lot of things we do, we have a hard time describing. A lot of the judgments we make, we sort of have a hard time describing. As a matter of fact, I'll use an example from a conversation I just had an hour and a half ago with one of my engineers on my team. We were talking about a certain part of the system and some aspect. I'm not going to go into the details, but I just said, I was like, my gut is just telling me we want to do it this way. I couldn't tell him why I thought that. I was just like, I don't know. I've been doing this a long time, and I just feel like the way you're describing is not as good as this other way. And probably if I really thought about it, I could break it down and try and explain. And I just think there's a lot of that we do uh, in our field. And then when you start to use agents, you have to be able to start to articulate that a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the thing that I was struck by is that another thing he said was he he then started to describe because once we got into it, I was like, oh, okay, tell me more about what your framework is doing and what have you what LLM are you using? What are the skills that you've set up? And there's a couple things that he said that I think are also interesting threads to pull on. The first one is that, and this has already been like this should be well known to most of our listeners who are paying attention to AI. Um, you know, you can swap out the models pretty easily with most of these tools, and you can it's more and more clear that the frontier models might be a little bit ahead, but the open source models are getting so good that
Hmm.
you know there's there's a real question about whether the model's doing that much. How much is the model doing versus how much is the framework and tooling around the model
Hmm.
actually doing the thing, right?
Hmm.
And so for example, um, Claude Code is the model that a lot of people are using, the framework that a lot of people are using, and you can, swap out different versions of the LLM behind it, and it still does all of its stuff, right? Cursor as an IDE has toggleable different models. You can pick different models, and the Cursor team basically released their own models so that they didn't have to, rent tokens from the frontier
Hmm.
models. And I would tell you, I've told you before that I think that their composer model is absolutely performing just as well, and it's cheaper than the other frontier models. I rarely ever ask Cursor to use one of the frontier models because composer's just fine, right?
Hmm.
So there's the IP of the model, and there's this big, huge, gargantuan battle between the frontier, models to try to make a better model. But maybe the framework is what matters.
Hmm.
And so then the question is, okay, well, do you? He had essentially built his own tooling because he started on it like, 12 months ago, where Open Claude didn't exist yet. Claude Code didn't quite have the same tooling to it. But OpenClaw and Claude Code and his own little tooling thing, they're all also rapidly approaching commoditization, right? So the
Hmm.
models themselves are essentially approaching commoditization. And his thesis, which in chatting with him about it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, is that the framework around the models, those things are also approaching commoditization,
Hmm.
right? So especially now that there's a dozen different variants of OpenClaw, and
Hmm.
and a bunch of them are open source, and they're all kind of competing for that framework space.
Hmm.
And so his thesis is like, hey, the thing that matters is probably more than anything is as he thinks about being an AI architect, AI engineer, is like, hey, it really matters. Like, how do you put all these pieces together? Like
Hmm.
the models themselves are going to be interchangeable. Maybe you're going to choose different ones based on the type of task. The frameworks are going to be commoditized. So what really matters is like your ability to sort of like frame up, piece these things together, and create opinionated skills about how to do the thing that you want done in a professional manner.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. I agree.
So then the other thread that I think you can pull on is, okay, what does this mean for engineering teams? Like, how should they be using Claude Code? Or how should they be using frameworks? How should they be using models? And how should they be integrating whatever they're doing into their software development lifecycle?
Well, I feel like you've teed up a topic on my mind, and I
Yeah.
don't have any answer for it. Maybe our 39 listeners can leave a comment in the comments wherever this is posted. But I think that's actually where we're at right now, which is we've got all sorts of people experimenting, doing different things. And I can't remember if I've talked about this in the podcast. I went a couple of weeks ago to a 2-day workshop led by the AI Tinkerers group on setting up a software factory.
Yeah.
And we worked through that for a couple of days. And what I took from that was those were the 2 days that we kind of entered a new era. We went from, when I did that, I went from, oh, okay, we've got a bunch of people. There's a whole spectrum of how people on our team are doing it. Some people are really far ahead, some people are resistant. Most people are in the middle. And what I took from that was, oh, okay, we need to kind of set up I'm going to try not to use loaded words. We need to develop a common approach amongst ourselves so that the roughly 100 or so people on this team are doing it similarly, because right now it's all over the map, and it's not all over the map in a bad way because all that experimentation is good. It even occurred to me in a conversation I had with some of my team about starting to standardize this. There wasn't even really agreement, like what should be a skill, what should do, how should the parts all fit together, basically.
Yep.
Forget what I said about what should be a skill, just how should the parts all fit together. And it's not that they were it wasn't even, it wasn't like people were butting heads and disagreeing. It was more like, should we do it that way or should we do
Yep.
it this way? It's all very open in greenfield. And so what we're kind of thinking of, this is the idea we're toying with. The notion of long-term support with software, right?
Hmm.
Companies will have, version one, version two, version three, and they'll have some version where they give you long-term support and they'll tell you we're going to support this for a while. We're kind of thinking of like maybe we do this long-term support approach where it's like, well, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to do it that way for say 3 months, and then we'll learn during that time, and then we'll revise it. And the reason I bring up the long-term support is one of the challenges we're having. It's moving so fast, right?
Yeah.
People are saying, well, you just suggested that I do it this other way, like last week, and now you're telling me to do it this way. I'm just trying to get my job done. I'm just trying to get some software built here. Like I can't be changing my whole development world every day. And so you can kind of have people experimenting, but then you sort of roll that into your LTS, let's say quarterly or
Yeah.
monthly. I don't know and this fits back with the ALDC that we talked about many
Yeah.
episodes ago. It's like it's kind of what we need to do is build our agent development lifecycle. Like how our
Yeah.
AI development lifecycle, what are all the
Yeah.
parts and how do they fit together? I think this is the
Exactly.
name of the game right now.
Yeah, I think so. And I think so so that really resonates with me and I have a couple reactions to it. The first reaction I'm going to say is this developer that I was talking about, one of the things he said, which I was like, this was the moment where I was kind of like, I didn't feel like I was necessarily my mind was blown, but this was where I was kind of like, oh sh yeah, yeah, old guy here's getting left behind. I gotta up my game. Was he basically said, look, man, if I do something consistently multiple times a day, I need to give that to my agent.
Hmm.
Like if I'm doing the same thing multiple times a day, that's a me teach the agent how to do it so it does it.
Hmm.
Teach the agent how to do it the way I do it so that it does
Hmm.
it my way.
Yeah.
And so this was a simple example, and this was the reason that like the beginning of the thread that I pulled on was, hey, wow, you're doing code reviews. Like we all do code reviews multiple times a day, right? This team is
Hmm.
cranking out 3,000 lines of code per developer per day. Like there's, every single person has got to, go do these code reviews, right? And so he was just like, I like even when I'm using agents to do things like do code reviews, I am still like saying, "Oh, now it's time for you to go look at this PR. Hey, agent, go look at this
Hmm.
PR, do a code review for it." And what he's gotten past is he doesn't even have to tell the agent to go do that.
Right. Right.
He has the automatic queue getting created, but because it's paying attention to the stuff that matters to him, it's sucking it in as a task for the harness to do, and then it knows, and he's told it, you are allowed to do these things without my supervision, and then these are the gates you come to where I will supervise you,
Hmm.
and this is the artifact I want you to give me, and then I will tell you to proceed or not.
So that, and you mentioned earlier, there's another person on that team who was doing something similar and had devised it in their own way.
And they had devised
And
it in their own way using a different framework, using a different, and I effectively am doing it my own way using a slightly different tool, but
yeah,
a more, even though again, I'm like this, and then there was another developer in the conversation. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of doing it Brad's way. Like I'm also too manual." And they were both like, "Oh yeah, like we need to figure out how to do it more automated so we can speed up even more."
well, let me ask you a question. My point of view about talking about the whole ALDC and LTS and stuff a minute ago was that thinking, okay, it's not good that everybody's doing it their own way because some people are doing it better than others. And some people are the fact, and because of the rate of change, some people aren't even really able to keep up. So I guess I want to pressure test an assumption I have.
Yeah.
When I hear you say you've got 3 or 4 people on your team all doing this differently, I'm saying to myself, oh, I would rather like that group of people come along and have one skill that they all share across their team. But I can also see some benefit maybe in the diversity. So like I'm just curious to know, like maybe I'm heading down the wrong path of trying to structure this and make it consistent.
I well, okay, that was kind of one of the other threads I wanted to pull on because I knew you wanted to go down that direction a little bit. And I'm gonna preface this by saying I bet you this is a it depends answer,
Of course, it depends.
right?
Where is Kevin when we need him?
Where's Kevin when we need him? So I think this one's going to be an it depends. First of all, the diversity and the experimentation and the willingness to let smart people. innovate, especially in the rapidly changing times that we're in,
Mhm.
feels like it's got to be the right call. Like over because standardization is optimization
Mhm.
and premature optimization is the death of so much software.
Well, that's why I'm trying to blend it together here. I'm trying to say, look, we're going to have a standard approach that everybody can use, and anybody can go innovate on their own. You don't have to use the standard approach. You because there's people where I can't stop them.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Yeah, exactly.
they're sending me text messages on 8 p.m. on Saturday night telling me all the cool stuff they're doing, right? So
Yeah.
like I can't stop them. So it's like, cool, go do it, great, and then let's learn what's really working, and then let's put that into the standard version. Because
Yeah.
not everybody on this team is going to be as excited about you and use their Saturday night to figure out how to make some cool thing work.
Well, so first of all, so it sounds like we're aligned on the idea
Yeah.
that like having a freedom to innovate, is the American way, and
Hmm.
let's let other
Yeah.
people do that. Okay, so that
Capitalism for the victory.
we're aligned on that. I get so the other part about your comment that resonates for me though is that um if you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling like you're being left behind, then man, that sure would help if someone would give you the recipe to
Yeah.
tell you how to set it up to not be stuck.
Hmm. That's
So
right.
that also makes sense and resonates for me. But then the other tension there is, man, this stuff is changing so fast. Even if you document it, it might be obsolete. It certainly will be obsolete in 3 months. It might be obsolete
Yeah,
even in
yeah.
2 weeks.
I'm
So
not even talking about documenting. I'm just like, let's talk about your code reviewer skill. It's like, okay, gang, here's our common code reviewer skill. We've all put our best thoughts on how to make a really good code reviewer skill here, right?
yeah, I think there's
And
value in I think there's value in capturing that. By the
and
way, I
then
will say the other thing about this is, and I keep saying this to people, I literally just said it to a team that I was doing some AI coaching with earlier today, where they were asking me like, well, what should we do here? And I basically said, forget about AI for a second. Like, don't like forget that AI is even in this conversation. What would you do normally? Like, what
right,
would you
right.
do as an engineering team?
Yeah.
I think the question was like, oh, we're going to use SpecKit SDD to produce we're going to do SpecKit specify, and it produces this like essentially PRD, and then we run clarify on it, and it's refined that, and it's really good. And they were like, at this point, should we have other developers review it, or should we go to the plan phase
Hmm.
before,
Hmm.
and then give them
Hmm.
both artifacts,
Yeah.
right? And I was just like, the answer to that question has nothing to do with AI.
Yeah, that's right. Someone at our company this week or last week, it must have been last week, I don't recall, gave a presentation about this exact same thing. Now we got a lot of people using SpecKit. I don't know if folks on the pod audience or know what SpecKit is. It's sort of an SDD framework that helps you develop your spec and your implementation plan. It's kind of basically plan mode, in Cursor. And he just mapped each of the things to each of the steps in our SDLC. And he's like, gang, this is no different than what we're already doing. You're just getting the AI to do it for you and you're double checking the work. Like,
Yeah,
in fact, it's doing it better because lots of times we'd skip a bunch of these steps because we would think it's easy or because we were lazy or because someone was impatient. And this, because it's so fast, we don't have to skip them anymore.
yeah,
So to me, that really resonated. And then I'm building on that with what you just said, which is like, forget about the AI. Like it's just our SDLC. What would you do? Right? Well, I wouldn't send a thing out there without having, so I wouldn't ship some code without having it reviewed. Okay. Who's going to review it? You or this robot over here?
right.
Right.
Exactly. And so what I think is interesting about that to apply to the question of standardization and or like kind of like the guidance that you want to give a team like, hey, like let's start doing it this way. The way, what is the way you're going to do it, right?
Mhm.
That is
That's the
definitely
thing.
that's like the way you would have done it independent of the AI.
Yeah, but this is where it gets complicated because you kind of have to. I agree, but also you have to figure out like how do we map these all the tools. I'm just going to broadly say all the tools out there, right? All the stuff out there. We kind of got to figure out how to map our stuff onto the onto the tools that are out there. Those tools are changing really rapidly.
Right.
That's
And
where it gets tricky.
I agree with that statement. So, but again, like if we like let's just pause the film for a second here, right? We're
Hmm.
gonna pause the
Hmm.
film and we're gonna say, okay, what happened here? What was Brad like, impressed by?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question is this is a team who has a very strong SDLC. It's
Hmm.
as long as I've worked with them for like 2.5 years now. They've always had
Hmm.
a so well before the early AI stuff. Like they had a strong SDLC. It was
Hmm.
like we get a ticket from product, we think about that, we write up our plan on that, we start to code it. When we're done coding it, we put up a pull request. That pull request gets reviewed. That it already went through all the quality gates of automated testing, blah blah blah. And when we merge it, then it's in our staging environment. We run our UATs, blah blah. It's like that was just their SDLC. The thing, and along the way, AI has gotten better and better, and each of these little parts of it, they've been adding a little AI spice to each little part. Oh,
Hmm.
the agents have gotten good enough that if I just give them a good quality ticket, they will write a great implementation plan. I trust that. Let's do it.
Hmm.
Right? Before that, there was that if I write the implementation plan and I give it to the agent, it does a good job of coding it. But
Hmm.
now they went to, okay, you're not just good at coding it, you're actually good at writing the implementation plan. I just need to read that. Oh, and now it's like, oh wait, they're actually really good at writing the specification for me, better than I am at writing the specification, right? And now I'm
Yeah.
just in it, and they're really good at doing code reviews. And so this team has already been putting in the agents at each of these places.
Just use the existing SDLC as the skeleton and start to add the agents to it.
And then what what the next step after you've done that, where manually at each place in the SDLC, a human being sits down and says, "Hey, Mr. Agent, now it's your time to write the spec."
Hmm.
Great, write the spec. Come back 10 minutes later. "Hey, agent, I've read your spec. I like it. Now it's time for you to write the implementation plan."
Hmm.
Right? Come back 5 minutes later, read the implementation plan. "Oh, hey, good job, agent. I trust that implementation plan. Now it's your time to, write the code. Dot 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 dot." What I'm saying is like this is the part that I feel like I went viral a couple weeks ago saying like no one's doing this overnight, right? To everyone's then now I'm like, "Oh, wait a second. This engineer that I actually really trust is
Hmm.
doing it overnight, and he has just figured out that some of those steps in his process can now be automated so long as he has based on the framework in his mind of what the definition of quality is,
Hmm.
he's able to get the checkpoints that matter.
Yeah. So it's really the quality gates are the key.
Yeah, and he even said that. He was like, "Look, I've gotten to the point now where I can be really clear about what the definition of a correct looking acceptance criteria is
Hmm.
for each of these steps along the way."
Wow. Wow. So we had an engineer at our weekly engineering show and tell show something off sort of similar this week. I just thought of it as you mentioned this. He was doing something slightly different. Every time we have a test fail, an automated test failure, he was triggering something. And you can imagine the steps, basically having the AI figure out the solution and create a PR. And then he was looking up in code owners who owned that area and just assigning it to that team. Say, I think I have a, effectively saying, this could be the fix to the problem.
Right.
And he said he's just testing it locally right now, like just within himself. He isn't assigning them to the teams yet. He's seeing if he can get it there, which is pretty cool. And someone else in our meeting was like, could we just start feeding that same thing bug tickets?
Yeah.
It's like, could we feed it errors from Datadog? He's like, yeah, I don't see why not.
Well, okay, cool. I love that story, and I'm gonna double down on that again. This super compelling story from this engineer that I trust. One of the things he mentioned is, yeah, I have an overnight. One of my jobs that I very clearly specified is the agents are to get 100% test coverage
Oh, yeah, for sure.
for but for old code that doesn't have
Hmm.
test coverage.
Oh, interesting.
So he has agents that are just preemptively going to find places in the code that are missing test coverage.
I wonder how it does that actually. Does it go execute the tests and then do some
Well,
sort of
you,
coverage reporting?
yeah, I mean your coverage report, at least,
It's giving it the coverage report.
it gives you the coverage report and it
Got it.
tells you
Okay.
tells you the functions and the lines and the
Okay.
branches that haven't been covered. And
Got
so
it.
he,
Got
so he's
it.
just like, look, I like this is I mean, this is a good example where it's like it's pretty hard to go wrong on writing a test. I mean, you can write tests that don't
Hmm.
actually test the thing,
Hmm.
but if you run every line of code, right, in the
Hmm.
test, then you
Yeah.
definitely got more coverage than if you didn't run every line of code. And so that's like a goal seeking, like that's a very straightforward thing for a goal seeking framework to be like, keep going
Hmm. Yeah.
until you get 100% coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Brad, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I am now squarely in the camp that in 5 years, we're not even going to recognize this industry. I mean, it's just going to be so different. Like, my career, which has lasted roughly the last 30 years, a little bit more, has been the internet era. Like I never worked on non-internet. I didn't work on any client server software. That was I came into this with the start of the internet, 1995, is when I got my first job as a
Yeah.
doing programming. It's been, the same. What's changed? Cloud. That's the main thing that changed. Cloud and mobile. Those are the two big things that changed over my time. But it's all been kind of the same refining of the same thing.
Yeah, I
Thinking,
think that's fair.
and to me, this is like, oh, this is just now on one hand, it's like, oh, this is changing everything. But then we just talked about it's the same SDLC.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing that that's the thing I'm holding on to. And I think that like, and I also think that this is a great example where, the engineer that I'm talking about here, he is one of the most successful, compelling users of this stuff, and he's a great engineer. And and he's pretty young actually, and he's been kind of like, oh man, what's going to happen to the industry? Right?
Hmm.
But what I see him doing is like exactly what I would tell every engineer to do. Like, you just gotta get great at giving your giving your opinion
Hmm.
to the tooling. And your opinion still matters. Your taste still matters.
Just leave it at that.
Your taste still matters.
Your taste still matters.
There you
All
go.
right,
All right.
Brad, it's been nice catching up this week.
Great catching up. What do we say?
Uh, Smash, rate, and review.
Smash that subscribe button. All right. See you guys
Absolutely.
next week.
All right, bye.
This episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was produced and edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.